Words mean nothing. Actions mean everything. Watch this. Watch it very closely. Ask a lot of questions. Focus those cameras on everything that's going on, because this president is trying to lead us into what could be called a civil war.
Our team coverage continues now as we continue to look at how the people of D.C. are responding to today's big developments from the White House.
That's right. News 4's Amy Cho is live in DuPont Circle tonight. So, Amy, we know demonstrators are gathering there tonight, but not everyone is against this move. Tell us about the people who are actually supporting this change.
Yeah, Sean, that's right. We've heard a variety of reactions today to the announcement from the White House. Some people expressing anger, but others expressing happiness and saying they were frustrated with crime. As far as the situation we are at right now, this is a protest against the Trump administration that just got underway a few minutes ago here at DuPont Circle. You can hear those chants from protesters saying Trump must go now and holding up signs that say the same. This is the second such protest we've seen today, with folks saying they do not want the federal government to take over the D.C. Police Department. But again, other district residents have told us they are happy with what's going on, saying they're fed up with feeling unsafe in their home city, and they welcome the Trump administration taking over D.C. Police.
DC united, we'll never be defeated. Calls for solidarity as some district residents protest the Trump administration's takeover of D.C. police.
But he isn't interested in actually helping people. He would rather demonize homeless D.C. residents to score cheap political points and stoke division.
We will not stand here and allow authoritarianism in Washington, D.C.
I want everybody to go talk to your neighbors. I want everybody to put out D.C. flags. I want you to put out Free D.C. banners. I want you to put out the Free D.C. logo.
But other district residents say they're happy with the president's announcement.
Placing the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department under direct federal control.
I'm just ecstatic. I've been saying that a long time ago. The federal government should take over the D.C. Police Department.
All right, guys, so we got to continue our coverage of the reactions to President Trump's announcement that he's cracking down on crime in D.C., okay? He's taking over the police force. He's bringing in the National Guard, and he's making D.C. great again, right? He's making D.C. safe again, and hopefully this is a roadmap for smart Democrats to turn around their liberal cities, okay? Because these liberal cities are crime-infested hellholes that, quite honestly, nobody really wants to visit anymore, right? That's the real reason why tourism is down, is because nobody wants to go to these liberal cities because they're unsafe, okay? We make these cities safe again, then maybe people will actually visit them. And the good thing about what President Trump is doing in D.C. is that despite the outrage from the media and the Democrats, President Trump does have some support, right? He does have people coming out and telling the truth about what's happening in D.C. Like, for example, the leader of the police union basically said that, yeah, he's behind the president when it comes to the crime crackdown. It needs to happen.
President Trump earlier saying he's deploying the National Guard to the nation's capital and placing police under federal control now. Let's bring in D.C. Police Union Chairman Gregory Pemberton. Thank you so much, sir, for being here. So from your view, is this necessary?
Well, look, we completely agree with the president that crime in the District of Columbia is out of control and something needs to be done with it. We have to go back to how we got here, though. In 2020, the D.C. City Council passed an enormous amount of legislation that handcuffs police officers, exposes them to administrative, civil, and even criminal liability, even when they do their jobs properly. And now, 5 years later, our authorized sworn strength is 4,000 sworn police officers. We currently have 3,180. So we have more than 800 vacancies for the position of police officer. And the way the department makes up for that gap is through 2 million hours of mandatory overtime every year. So the fact that we need help from federal law enforcement and maybe even the National Guard, it shouldn't come as a surprise. And we agree with that. I think one of the issues here, though, is that we all know that's going to be temporary. So in order to fix this problem and make sure that it doesn't ebb and flow and that the feds come in and we lower crime and then they leave and we're left holding the bag, it's very important that people know that there is underlying legislation that needs to be corrected so that we can actually properly staff this police department in order to properly police the city.
So with that being said, as much as the mainstream liberal media wants to pretend as if this is not a problem, okay, along with Democrats, however, it is a problem, okay, as much as Democrats want to deny it. And we know it's a problem because every now and then the truth serum slips out on airways that don't want you to hear the truth. Like, for example, on MSNBC, another Trumper came on to Al Sharpton's show and told the truth about what's happening with crime in D.C., which, again, is clearly not what Al Sharpton wanted to hear.
Increase in federal surveillance and guns on the streets really the answer here? Rena?
Put it this way, Rev, it's a starting point. And I'm not somebody who says that lightly. I say that as somebody who has been a D.C. resident for nearly 2 decades. I have seen firsthand what D.C. has gone through post-pandemic, and it has been tough. And though crime may be down right now, it will come right back up because Mayor Muriel Bowser's leadership has failed time and time again. And I have given her a chance. Many people across the city have given her a chance to say, you can do better for us. You can keep our communities safer from violent carjackings that have resulted in deaths on K Street, which is a business hub, death of an Uber driver simply trying to deliver food in Navy Yard. These stick out to me because these aren't isolated incidents. It's just part and parcel with what comes with raising a young family in the nation's capital like I have. Those things she all mentioned are all fine and well, but none of it speaks to how safe Washington, D.C. actually is. It is not a safe city. It is not a city that is well run because guess what? The minority seat on the council has never even been, in my recollection, for at least a decade and a half, if not more, been occupied by a member of a minority party. I'm talking about Republicans. So blame can be put everywhere. And I don't want to make this a partisan issue. My heart sinks when I think of the countless young people who are committing these crimes, boys as young as 14. We know there's a fatherlessness crisis, but I am saying this. The mayor needs to acknowledge that the city has failed, and she has had many chances to prove she can do better. The council has had many chances to prove they can do better.
But is it the mayor's job or the president's job?
Yeah, so clearly not what Al Sharpton wanted to hear, right, at all. Okay, again, that came from a never Trumper. You also have an ABC news anchor who let the truth slip as she went off script and talked about her experience living in D.C. as well, in which she says that it is a crime-infested hellhole.
We've been talking so much about the numbers, and yeah, usually that's how you play devil's advocate, is you talk about, oh, well, stats say crime is down. However, I can tell you firsthand here in downtown D.C. where we work, right here around our bureau, just in the past 6 months, there were 2 people shot. 1 person died, literally 2 blocks down here from the bureau. It was within the last 2 years that I actually was jumped walking just 2 blocks down from here. And then just this morning, one of my coworkers said her car was stolen a block away from the bureau. So we can talk about the numbers going down, but crime is happening every single day because we're all experiencing it firsthand while working and living down here.
Yeah, and this is why I told you guys that politically speaking, the Democrats in there, don't believe reality, don't believe your eyes and your ears and your own experience. That is not going to work in this situation, right? It didn't work when it came to inflation. It didn't work when it came to the economy. It didn't work when it came to the border. It didn't work when it came to crime over the last 4 years. It's not going to work now, okay? You cannot continue to tell people that their experiences are not real, right? That what they're experiencing is not something that they should be concerned about. Everybody knows that lives in D.C. that it is dangerous. They all know this. I mean, even CNN admitted that, yeah, we're not going to win by telling people that crime is down when people do not feel that crime is down.
What's striking is that National Democrats are not following Mayor Bowser's lead on this, and that National Democrats have been insisting, just look at the statistics. We have 30-year low, violent crime, whereas Mayor Bowser is talking about, hey, we need to get 500 more police officers on the streets. We'd like the federal government to help us rebuild our jail. She's talking about some of the reforms she did to make it so accused violent offenders don't get out of jail pre-trial. So there is this disconnect, and I've talked to Democratic strategists today that think that National Democrats saying, look at the statistics is sort of a tone-deaf way to react.
And it's very much, isn't this the exact same problem that Democrats had last year? Look at the statistics. We promise you the economy is great while people are going, it doesn't feel great to me. That feels like a lot of this conversation around crime, that you can point to statistics all day long that say, hey, D.C. is safer this year than it was last year. But do people feel safe? Bottom line, if they don't, they may be more okay with something that would otherwise be considered extraordinary.
Yeah, and that is why I say, politically speaking, this is really bad for Democrats to boo-hoo, whine, and cry about this, right? Because Democrats are essentially taking a stance of being against being tougher on crime. Again, this is the same party that suffers from being characterized as a soft on crime party, right? That they want to defund the police. See, again, this is what makes Trump one of the most savvy politicians who, again, it's just kind of funny how he is not a career politician, right? But he seems to do politics better than career politicians, people who've been in the game for decades, right? He seems to be outsmarting these people because him coming out here, again, and cracking down on crime in D.C. is making Democrats take a stance against that, which already looks bad for them considering how, again, they have a reputation for being soft on crime. So you're not going to beat these soft on crime allegations by coming out against being tough on crime, right? That is essentially the hole that Democrats have dug themselves in. And like I told you guys, over the last 4 years, Democrats have done a lot of that. Oh, let me deny reality, okay? And that did not work out well for them in the election. So with that being said, one of the reasons why they're denying reality is because their base of radical lunatics doesn't like to admit the truth about who's committing the crimes, right? Which means that if you do a crime crackdown, there are going to be a lot of individuals, okay, who people don't like to admit that commit a vast majority of these crimes, especially in D.C. They're going to be facing accountability, okay? They're going to get thrown in jail. They're going to get locked up, and that is racism, right? According to the black activists who are protesting, right? They're protesting President Trump and his crime crackdown in D.C. So without further ado, let's get into it.
Great. The president has been trying to provoke violence here, right here, in the black communities and in the brown communities, having ICE kidnap our neighbors, having the black community be harassed and profiled and want a response. We say, hell no, we won't go.
Hell no, we won't go. We won't go. Hell no, we won't go.
When we say we won't go, that means we're not going to those mass incarceration, into their prisons and enslavement. We won't go into their ICE, what do you call his beautiful centers that he got. We won't go to where alligators live. Hell no, we won't go.
Hell no, we won't go. Hell no, we won't go. Hell no, we won't go.
Today we gather to speak plainly about policy path that sounds strong, but in truth, it weakens the very safety we seek. We believe there is a better way to protect us all, one that respects rights to build trust and keep our communities truly safe, and that is fascism-free. Fear is not a roadmap to safety. It is a burial. It fails hardest on the black communities that already we bear a disproportionate share of surveillance, stops, and forces.
Well, again, why is that? People keep talking about, well, the black community experienced a disproportionate amount of the arrest and the surveillance and the harassment from police. Well, it's because the black community, or put it this way, black criminals commit a disproportionate amount of the crime. Right? It's really that simple. If you commit a disproportionate amount of the crime, of course you're going to get a disproportionate amount of the attention, right? There's nothing racist about that. Okay? It's just common sense.
I want to be clear. We've been here before. This is a long history. Well before today, the black communities bear the brunt of aggressive policing. Data and reports from many credible organizations show patterns. Black people are more likely to be stopped, searched, questioned, arrested, and harmed in encounters with the law. When we add the presence of federal agents or the National Guard to daily life in these neighborhoods, the burden can multiply. Not by making harm more rare, but making it more visible and more likely to escalate. So be clear, this has been going on. But as you bring more policemen, it's going to escalate. Black Washingtonians have long recognized that community violence cannot be solved through state violence and have asked for meaningful investments and solutions that are proven to work. Racist over-policing goes beyond D.C. as the roots of American policing in many regions, like enslaved patrols. Police have been enslaving and murdering black people with freedom for punishment for centuries.
Wow. You know what's amazing? I've never experienced, right, any of this, racism, hate, and bigotry that allegedly comes from police. I've been pulled over probably a handful of times, right? I've interacted with the police, never experienced this stuff. Black people not being enslaved by police. If you are a black law-abiding citizen, police are not a problem. And I don't know why is it that I have to continue to say this, right? Why are black people so brainwashed into believing that police are terrible for black folks, when the reality is that if you do not commit crimes, your chances of having a negative experience, like a negative violent experience with a police officer, is like zero, like straight up, right? If you do not commit crimes, if you're not a criminal, if you don't live a life of crime, and even if you commit a crime, right, in a one-off scenario, right, again, your chances of having a negative violent interaction with a police officer is still damn near zero, okay? The best way to avoid being caught up in the crackdown, right, the crime crackdown, is to not commit crimes, right? If you're not committing crimes, you won't get caught up, right? If you are following the law, if you're not breaking the law, you're going to be fine. The only people who need to worry are the lawbreakers. The people who are the loudest about this, right, probably are the criminals, okay? Because they're panicking, as they should.
I stand in front of you today with a signal to the residents of D.C. and the country that we will not be idle as oppressive structures try to harm our communities and take power. The fight for black liberation and the liberation of all people will not stop, no matter our oppression, intimidation, manipulation tactics. We have the right to demand respect, to protect ourselves and protect each other. And as the executive director of Harrow's Wildest Dreams, I want to name, white people's civil rights have never been in danger because they are white. The white civil rights represents the desire from the Jim Crow, full stop. At Harrow's Wildest Dreams, and as we support Free DC, we're fighting against mass incarceration, policing, ICE, violence towards immigrants and Muslims, violence in Palestine, worker exploitation, and more. We're fighting.
All these are communists. All of these are communists. Just listen to them. They're all communists.
For freedom and safety for all people.
Yeah, except you're not fighting against the criminals, right? She named everybody. You fight against any and everything except the criminals, right? Except the criminals in these communities that are hurting black folks. Again, that's the irony here, and that's what really kind of pisses me off. But I'm so used to this, right? Like, I'm so used to it that it doesn't even faze me anymore to see these people, right, that come out here and they're boo-hoo-whining and crying about making their community safer. Really? Really? Why are you crying about your community being safer? Your community doesn't become less safe because there are more police, right? Despite this BS from these people, oh, police are making black people unsafe. If you're a criminal, if you're a black criminal, yeah, you might be unsafe, right? But if you're not a black criminal, you're not unsafe, right? With police around. Again, I don't really understand how in 2025 anybody can be against making communities safer, but this is where we are, right? This is how upside down our politics has become, right? Where Democrats, they reflexively stand against Trump no matter what, and that just puts them in very awkward situations. And once again, we have another awkward situation where Democrats are literally standing against law and order. They said, nah, it's totally fine, right? With the crime that's happening in D.C. right now, you shouldn't want crime to be lower. You should want that, right? That's terrible. That's a terrible thing. Again, not a good look. Not a good look for the party that's trying to run away from the defund the police perception, right? That is the perception people have of Democrats. You're not going to run away from that by standing against law and order. Democrats, once again, revealing how they really feel. Same thing on illegal immigration. Look at how they're standing against Trump. They want to pretend as if they want a secure border. They got a secure border and they're boo-hoo-whining and crying about it, right? They want to pretend as if they're not for defunding the police, but yet Trump wants to crack down on crime, and look how they're boo-hoo-whining and crying about it. Again, not smart politics from Democrats, but hey, this is what you should expect from a party that has no leader. So let me know what you guys think. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Most importantly, share a Black conservative perspective. Peace.